Inside Catch the Devil, 2026's most talked about true crime book. A murder investigation along the Gulf Coast should have been solved quickly. It was not, and a new book explains exactly why. Catch the Devil, written by journalist Pamela Colloff and published this year by nonfiction, is being called more than a retelling of a case. Critics are treating it as one of the most important true crime releases of the year. Colloff built her reputation on investigative journalism focused on wrongful convictions and flawed forensic science, cases where the truth took far longer to surface than it should have. That background shapes this entire book. So what makes it different from every other true crime release this year? The book does not simply walk through a murder investigation, from crime to arrest to trial. It is interested in the cracks in the system that let the case go wrong before it eventually went right. Reviewers have specifically praised how Colloff balances two stories running in parallel. A psychological portrait of the person responsible, described as unsettling, without leaning on sensationalism, and a broader look at institutional failure, the kind of systemic gap that lets mistakes happen, even when investigators are working in good faith. Publishers Weekly, reviewing the book ahead of release, called it both an unsettling character study and a window into a justice system with real cracks in it. That dual focus separates Catch the Devil from true crime writing that leans on shock value without offering insight into why cases like this happen in the first place. But why does this particular investigation carry so much weight? Colloff's investigative background matters here. She has spent years reporting on cases where forensic evidence turned out less reliable than juries were told, or where shortcuts led police toward the wrong suspect before the truth emerged. Readers familiar with her earlier work will recognize the same instinct running through Catch the Devil. Looking past the initial narrative, a case presents to ask what got missed, overlooked, or rushed. That instinct shows up in how the book is structured. Rather than opening with the crime itself, early chapters reportedly spend real time on the investigators assigned to the case, their caseloads, their resources, and the pressure they were under to produce an arrest quickly. That choice matters because it reframes the eventual mistakes not as individual failure, but as the predictable result of a system stretched too thin. Readers looking for a simple villain in the investigation itself may be surprised to find the book more interested in the conditions that made errors likely than in assigning blame to any single detective. For true crime audiences specifically, the appeal reaches beyond the crime itself. A growing share of the genre's audience wants books examining process and system, not just the crime and the criminal. Catch the Devil fits that shift, offering something closer to investigative journalism, while still delivering the tension that keeps a true crime book compelling from start to finish. The Gulf Coast setting adds a regional dimension too, distinguishing the book from true crime coverage, concentrated heavily around a small number of frequently discussed regions. Readers interested in stories that expand beyond the most commonly covered areas may find the setting itself part of the appeal, offering insight into how a specific regional justice system, with its own resources and constraints, handled a case of this magnitude. Rural and coastal jurisdictions often operate with a fraction of the forensic infrastructure available to larger metro departments, and Colloff reportedly uses that gap directly, showing how a shortage of trained examiners and backlogged labs shaped decisions that a better resourced department might never have had to make in the first place. The timing matters too. The book arrived as part of a wave of true crime nonfiction hitting shelves this month, alongside titles covering a decades-old Arctic, Alaska murder, and a memoir from the grandson of organized crime figure Meyer Lansky. Against that backdrop, Catch the Devil has stood out, cited by multiple outlets as a standout entry in an already crowded field. The book also fits a longer tradition of journalists returning to cases years after the initial coverage faded, once legal proceedings fully play out and key figures are willing to speak candidly. That approach tends to produce stronger books than coverage written in the immediate aftermath, since it allows patterns and system-level failures to become visible that were not yet clear while the story was still unfolding. Sources who would not talk during an active investigation, worried about compromising a prosecution or violating a gag order, often become far more willing once a case has fully resolved. And Colloff's timeline reportedly benefited from exactly that shift, with several investigators and forensic staff speaking on the record for the first time. What makes a true crime book worth recommending to an audience that reads dozens a year usually comes down to whether it offers something beyond the basic facts. Colloff's rigor, her attention to systemic failure, and her ability to write a genuinely unsettling character study without cheap shock value are the qualities early reviews keep returning to. There is also a craft element worth noting for anyone who reads true crime primarily for the writing itself. Colloff has a reputation, built over years at outlets known for long-form, investigative work, for restraint in how she describes violence, favoring precise, documented detail over dramatized language. That restraint reportedly carries through Catch the Devil, with reviewers noting that some of the book's most unsettling passages are also its plainest, letting verified fact do the work that a more sensational writer might have handed to dramatic prose instead. It is worth spending a moment on why Gulf Coast cases in particular tend to slip through the cracks that Colloff is interested in. Jurisdictions along that stretch of coastline often deal with seasonal population swings, tourism traffic that makes canvassing witnesses far harder than in a stable residential area, and overlapping jurisdiction between local police, county sheriffs, and sometimes state investigators, each with their own procedures and their own reluctance to hand a case fully to another agency. That overlap can slow an investigation in ways that have nothing to do with anyone's competence and everything to do with structure. And Catch the Devil reportedly treats that structural friction as central to the story rather than a footnote explaining away the delay. There is also a question worth asking about what a book like this owes to the victim's family, separate from what it owes to readers curious about the case. Early reviews suggest Colloff kept the family involved throughout the reporting process, a choice that shapes how much access a writer gets to unreleased documents and off-the-record context, but also one that comes with real obligations about how that family is portrayed once the book is finished. Journalists who specialize in wrongful conviction reporting tend to take this seriously in a specific way, since their entire body of work rests on trust built with people who have been failed by institutions once already, and have every reason to be wary of a writer showing up asking for their story a second time. For readers who want true crime that asks harder questions about how the justice system actually functions, Catch the Devil is shaping up to be one of the defining releases of 2026. It is a reminder that the most compelling stories in this genre are rarely just about what happened. They are about everything that had to go wrong, and everyone who had to fail before the truth finally came out. Books like this one tend to stay in conversation longer than a typical release precisely because they leave readers with a framework for questioning the next case they hear about, not just a satisfying ending to one story. Drop a comment on which true crime book you're reading next this month, subscribe for more book breakdowns, and share this with someone who has already read every case in this genre twice.